Meenakshi Shedde. I'm South Asia delegate for the Berlin Film Festival, and it's a huge honor for me to be here with the team of Baksho Bondi, Shadowbox, that was had a fantastic world premiere at the Perspective section. With me is Tanushree Das, Samir and Sahi, both directors of the film. This is Shaunak Sen, who's producer of the film, Tillotama Shome, who's star of the film, Vikramaditya Motwane, who is executive producer on the film. They each have a huge body of work behind them. Tanushree Das has been a fantastic editor with a number of films, over a dozen of them, including Baksho Bondi and Ib Ale U, that was in Berlin. Yes. Samir and Sai is a fantastic cinematographer, and on this also director, also screenwriter and producer, so many hats. And his fantastic body of work as a cinematographer also includes All That Breathes, that he worked with Shaunak, and also Ib Ale U, that was in Berlin. Shaunak Sen, of course, directed the fantastic Oscar-nominated All That Breathes, and he's producer on this film. Tillotama Shome has a huge body of work, way over 25 somewhere, a large number of films as well as series. And she's also been a big champion. I don't know how conscious it was of a number of women directors as well, including Baksho Bondi, but also Sir, that was at the Cannes Film Festival by Roina Gera, also Death in the Ganj by Konkona Sen Sharma, and many others, as well as series. And Vikramaditya Motwane, of course, actually, yeah, he's been, as I see it, a huge champion of what I call Mindi films, which is mainstream plus indie. So have very indie sensibility.
Mindi.
But with a lot of mainstream elements, including stars, genre, and all that. So I'd like to start by asking Tanushree Das, what was the starting point of this film, and how the story evolved, if you could tell us about it.
The story evolved from a very personal experience of one, seeing my mother, who is almost like Maya, and her resilience and her love for my father, because her love was she had a love marriage, and which was a rebellion in itself in the 80s, and in a middle class family, and then how she stuck to that love even though it was a hard love, because it was only very late, actually right before my father passed away, that we realized that he had depression, and we sometimes didn't understand how and why things were the way they were. But so it came from that personal space of wanting to explore, therefore, what it is for a family to deal with mental distress. And so that.
Fantastic. And, you want to tell us a little more about what the film is about?
Yes. Would you like to?
Yeah, please. Yes. He's also the screenwriter. Yeah.
Yes.
So Baksho Bondi deals with a family where a teenage son is often a parent to his own father, and his wife is the breadwinner, and the husband suffers from PTSD. He was a soldier, ex-soldier, who now collects frogs for a living. And our story revolves around the everyday struggles of this family and the immense pressures that the son and the wife are put to when the husband disappears one night and then is suspected of being involved in a possible murder, that possibly he's a suspect, and so it's kind of the story of how the family hold together in these very trying situations.
Yeah, thank you. Shaunak, tell us how you got to know him first, what made you join this team, and what you envisage for the film in terms of your own experience of reaching out literally all over the world.
Well, for one, I first encountered his work as a cinematographer, and I had the great fortune and honor of collaborating with him on All That Breathes.
Yeah.
And I was obviously very familiar with Tanushree's robust body of work as an editor, and her work on Ib Ale U and so on. It's, the indie circuit is quite small and incestuous, which I imagine as is the Mindi circuit.
Anyway.
Even smaller.
It might be actually a country of one. So therefore, there's always this kind of a collegial conviviality between this sort of a...
So nice.
So, and I think Somo had first mentioned this project to me when we were surrounded by about 100 black kites in enclosure in the the house of the brothers from All That Breeds, and I sort of then got seduced by his
Pitch.
it wasn't even a pitch.
Yeah.
It felt like that was the right way to go about it.
So
and obviously, they're both very obviously lovely and easy to be around. And that's when one sort of started talking to them about the script. And I think my sort of main input, I'd say, was at the script level to begin with, because we would have long discussions kind of vivisecting the script, and there onwards it became a kind of a shape-shifting beast where many people came in, and a rare occasion in cinema where you can use the cliche, the more the merrier.
So lovely. Yeah, this is a very unusual raft of producers and supporters.
Yeah, we
That's
have
wonderful.
a legion of producers.
Yeah.
And it's actually not, despite that, it's never felt claustrophobic. And it's only been very nice because people have chipped in with their specific kind of inputs.
Yeah.
And insofar as my hope for the film would be is, well, threefold. Firstly, for people to see this kind of film, the fact that we have people like Nikhil or Vikram, etc., they bring in their own kind of constituency, and as I discovered yesterday, fandom. And
So why would you discover it?
because in the Q&A yesterday, somebody randomly said because your producer will not make a sequel to his. That just speaks to
Total fandom.
I mean, if not discover it, it was definitely bludgeoned on top of it. So
The Mindy Motwane murder.
You have a new series coming up.
Mindy Motwane murder mysteries. So and also look, as we are discovering now with audience responses and reviews, etc., the Tilly performance is special, and it is this thing. We're all now thinking of Tilly-related alliterations. So just for people to see the film, see her performance, and I hope this production model also sort of catches on.
Absolutely, it's quite revolutionary. So Tillotama, I'd really like to ask, but you all have been many, many years in the making of this film, which happens to a lot of films, but also during COVID, etc. Did that also give you space for maybe introspecting, because there's not much one can do except introspect or locked up in a house? Tell me how the script evolved and what you were able to bring to it, maybe other than what was on the page.
It coincided with my role as a caregiver. So there were a lot of blanks that one could fill up with something that one understood viscerally, physically, like lack of sleep.
That's like disease of this century, I think.
and the dissociations that your mind goes through when you don't have enough sleep and you're physically tired. Those were real, I think, pillars of understanding Maya. And also I have an uncle who I really disliked. Not when I was a child. When I was a child, he fascinated me because he would often have stories of going away to forests and had adventures that were very inaccessible and almost sounded like fairy tales. But as I grew older, I saw his meanness and I saw his how he hurt everybody around him, and slowly that love for him turned into some hate, as it very easily turns. And what we didn't realize until we were much older is that he was actually just really unwell, and we didn't do anything, and it was too late. And by the time we realized something was off, it was so late that we couldn't handle him physically anymore, keep him safe for us, and he had to go into an assisted living. And he passed away a few days before we came to Berlin. No, it's good. It's good. It's all good. It's a full circle, and I think just seeing Sundar, ability to hold Chandan was my way of also forgiving myself for just not being a bigger person who could have had a more grown-up reaction to someone who was unwell, and I just never had a chance to express it in my life. So it was wonderful to get an opportunity to do that, and that he's not suffering while we celebrate this film. It's also
It ties up so much to what you were saying, right? We don't recognize mental illness, especially in India, but really, and so much gets distorted in family dynamics because we don't recognize it. Yeah, so thank you for sharing that. Vikram, again, I'd like to ask you what you bring to the table because it's really, for me, a very, very precious, very delicate film, not at all obviously appealing. It takes time to grow in. What would you bring to the table in terms of nurturing and mentoring this further in its onward international and Indian journey?
Very little up till now, but I whatever the film needs, I think the whole as Shamak's already mentioned, the fact that even though it's a cohort almost of producers, it doesn't feel claustrophobic. I think because number one, we're following their lead as far as any creative is concerned, and number two, it's like whatever is needed is going to be done. So I think the journey onwards is distribution, sales, all that sort of stuff, and with Naren, of course, who's the lead producer. Whatever we can do, whoever we can call, whatever it takes in that kind of sense. But again, there's nothing is laid down in terms of like your job is that. And your job is that. I think it's very fluid. It's very open. It's very. It's a great.
Lovely. Tillotama, you wanted to add?
Yes,
Please.
Mindy Motwane muscle.
Yeah, I was trying not to say the word muscle because she is like, she's averse to the word. Heft. No, we had another one the other day.
No, only with the alliteration.
Yeah.
Then
What was that?
This is not
One
for
more.
that.
No, there's another word we came up with.
Yeah.
In
For
the
Tanushree.
place of help. In
Yeah.
the place of help of heft, huh?
Yeah, no,
Heft.
I'm curious how the story evolved. Like there are some 2-3 broad themes. So there's mental health, of course. I really, really, really liked how the kids' perspective. You had many moods of love and hate and real anger and resistance, and you expressed it very beautifully in film. There were very well chosen songs and wonderful how you had his point of view. Usually we don't take kids seriously in our cinema. Generally they're treated as kids, but he was really quite mature as well, and very mixed things, right? Which those nuances came through really well. Tell me how the story evolved, because I'm curious how, because my brain somehow, with working for Berlin, Toronto and other festivals, I'm partly trained to look at how I react as a film per se, but also how it's likely to be perceived or what people might be concerned about, etc. And my job is, of course, to explain why this film is important for India, etc. So one of my, I was wondering if any of, because maybe you pitch to friends who are, because you'll have so many contacts among your friends internationally, if anyone came back with the reaction that is this reactionary in terms of a woman being in this prison of marriage and determined to save her marriage and her relationship at any cost, or to you it's completely different, or coming from an altogether different space? Is it? Did you ever get feedback, not from this team but from outside, that it's kind of pushing back when a woman, when she's really holding the family, the pillar of the family, she could have chosen to be independent, but she chose to stay on, and the relationship was all the relationships important to her. What is your feeling about it?
No, I didn't get feedback like that from the team ever.
No, not from the team for sure.
Yeah.
I'm saying from
and
anyone
now
else.
people are just beginning to see the film, and my audience reaction so far, whatever I have heard, is very, very beautiful. For example, yesterday we were at the party that Anne was hosting, and Shruti and Anne were hosting, and Anne told me that this film reminded her of her childhood in East Berlin.
Oh,
And that is exactly what we want to do with this film.
wow, wonderful.
And that is exactly what we are trying to say here, is that just don't look at just the context of it just being a Bengali or family or something.
Oh, not at all.
Look
Yeah.
at it from the human perspective. And look at it from the perspective of all those invisible women in the world. And there are invisible women and men
Yeah.
in the
Yeah.
world, throughout the world.
Yes.
It doesn't matter first world, second world, third world countries, these are always
Absolutely, it's
forever.
universal. Yeah.
And when it comes to human beings, there are people who are everyday toiling, and like I said before also, love really does not work that way. No matter
true, it's
who
not
tells
logical.
it, and if you sit down and think for a second, you'll also realize we always stick to what we really, really love and care. That is why human beings still exist as a society, I think. I mean, we wouldn't be here if we just every time there was trouble or we had some discomfort, we would just get up and leave.
Yeah.
Nobody does that.
Yeah.
Who does that? Nobody. So I don't think that is at all, what we are trying to do, and audiences are getting it.
Absolutely.
And that's why I'm very excited about all the Q&As right now. Because I really want to talk to them. And wherever this film goes, that is why I hope some of us, one of us, can go and just talk to them and find that out.
Yeah.
What are they feeling? Do they remember the Mayas in their lives? Or are they the Maya that they didn't think they were and suddenly realize, oh, I'm also a Maya?
Yeah.
And it's not about prison. That's why it's called Baksho Bondi, because this prison is in our heads.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And
It's
it is the
metaphorical.
key. And if you actually look at Maya, she is not in prison. She is a financially independent woman in India.
Absolutely.
That is a big step.
Yeah.
She is going to open her shop very soon.
Yeah.
She's going to leave this job. She has plans. She's saving her money.
Yeah.
She has plans. She's not some silly woman suffering.
Not at all.
It's not that at all.
Mm-hmm.
She has plans and she's going to finish it.
Yeah.
It'll take her time. She's
Yeah.
alone, but she'll finish
She's
it.
very determined.
Yeah.
Meenakshi, just one
Yes,
second.
please,
Sorry.
please
This
do,
is
please.
important for me. I just feel we're living in a time where we shouldn't divide a room based on whether a woman chooses to stay or chooses to leave. Because I think both can be very viable choices that a
Absolutely.
woman makes. And I think, we are at a time where I think we're just celebrating the complexity of the choices that lead one to a certain point to be
Sure.
able to look at it without our judgment.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Shomo, as a screenwriter, did you go a lot back and forth? How did it start from its first point to the end? And I'm also asking because I really, as I mentioned yesterday, it's very, very, very rare for me, from what I've observed in India. Very few married men who are in a marriage who actually look after themselves, look after the kids, do the cooking or the caregiving. The caregiving is usually, it's almost always the woman. There's some bits of it, but from what I've observed, I've not seen everything. Is this something especially that you wanted to touch on, the caregiving aspect in the film, which is very crucial, but in terms of man-woman relationships? He's of course not able to do what he could have otherwise, but how did this play out in your mind when writing the screenplay?
There were two questions there. One was about the process and
Yeah.
one was a very specific one. So
Yeah.
would you like me to take it?
Yeah, please, yes.
So in terms of the writing, the idea of the film had been germinating for over a decade. Tanushi and I first discussed the seed of this idea as film students when we were in FTI.
Oh,
And,
like forever! Wow.
But we would write drafts in short bursts of time, but we would continually revisit, and often for the longest time we would write scenes as kind of postcards, and so it wasn't organized as a linear narrative. And the effort was to try and find a world for each character, which would be based on lived experience from our life, also from acquaintances. We would go mining for stories from in an almost documentary way,
Yeah.
and then try to condense and collapse that world into every scene. And so we didn't want to have backstories,
Yeah.
but we wanted to give a sense of a lived life in every scene, and
Yeah.
in small bits of dialogue, in small exchanges, and so on. And this rewriting was something that we continued all for at least 5 active years. We never
Gosh.
counted how many drafts we wrote. And we subjected our producers and Tillotama to each one of those drafts. But I think that the fact that we never had a final draft was important. One because the search itself was what was important, and we till the edit we were searching for who Maya is, who Sundar is, what the relationship is. Even we changed certain dialogues after we shot the film.
Wow.
So especially some of the two main conversations that happened towards the end of the film. So finding the script was a constant search, and we never wanted to stop that search. And then the rewrites. Tillotama has been talking in some interviews of how the drafts became ghosts for her, and they helped the scenes that we threw out
It was still in our head.
It was still in our head, but
Yeah.
that gave memory.
Yeah. Lovely.
And
Lovely.
it gave understanding to us in terms of where we disagreed. So that
Give us examples how you fine-tune things like this when you disagree. Give us an example.
I mean, there's one example of we received a certain feedback and we tried to make the character more specific, and we wrote a lot of very minute details of what Maya does, and Tillotama reacted very strongly against it because she had imagined Maya differently.
Okay.
But
But so have we actually.
So,
Yeah.
but
So how did you resolve it? I'm just
But it
curious
was
creatively how it was.
for us. It was just the fact that we were having this disagreement, and then it became that we were talking about a concrete person. For the longest time, Maya was a fictional character.
Yeah.
But if someone has strong opinions about it, and then are willing to fight for it, then it's already become
That's
real.
super because it's really invested in it.
Yes.
Also lovely.
Yes.
So those navigating those multiple drafts and multiple variations ends up in something very concrete, and then it becomes a lived life, a real person.
Lovely. It brings it nuance. Lovely. Shona, do you have? Can you share specific things that you would feedback that you gave them on the script? And because for me it's also very close between docu and fiction. It's so rooted in reality. So
Sure. So at the script stage, my interest wasn't really in terms of the intersection between doc and fiction.
Yeah.
I was looking at it as pure
Yeah,
text and
yeah.
responding to it as such. My main interest actually was that the film drills in on a nuance of emotion that we don't often see, which is the point at which one decides to let a relationship go, and how long one inhabits or occupies that kind of a sliver.
Yeah.
And the bit at the end where the twain, not to
give
give a
away.
spoiler,
Yeah.
but in the vaguest way where the twain do opt to separate, like it's that kind of that instance of inhabiting a difficult love, whether to hold on, whether to let go, and how that sort of moment often plays out,
Yeah.
was was of main interest to me. And actually, a lot of the discussions were really about the brass tacks of the chiseling of craft, about when you do this to the first act, the second act, this is happening, that kind of
Alters.
thing. So just
Wonderful.
the narrative
Wonderful.
inners and entries.
That's lovely. Tillotama, there were very, very strong emotional kind of explosions, but you had them in a very contained manner. Especially the moment when you know about your husband and you have news that he could be involved in something panicky, when there's a train at the back. And that moment, I think I remember it for long. Can you tell us a little more about how you arrived at that moment? It was very, very special.
Like every other moment, I suppose, you just sit on that, you take in where you are, and it was bustling with my co-actors were plenty.
In the middle of a street, you were.
Yeah, and there were many co-actors, and so I just had to take it in and just sit there and take in the news. And
In your head, were you going through like, oh my God, is he dead or what? Because that's what we assumed, and we're not really sure. And it's like, is it a relief? Is it, oh my God, what am I going to do now? Like, what was going through your mind to prepare for the moment?
no, I think they're unutterables, right? I don't think there's a precedence to it. I've thought about the mortality of my parents, of my loved ones. Obviously, these are concerns that you really do think about in your mid-40s a lot more. But in that moment, you're really not.
You're just present.
You're just present, and there was a man making tea right opposite who was looking at me in a certain way, which really, his look was so devastating. It was such a kinship of a stranger, and there were so many strangers around me. And it was a rare moment of her actually allowing her interiority to seep out.
Yeah.
But those around her, I'm sure they all had. They've kept their interiority really locked in, but they were all around me. Had someone had a moment, to sit down, I might have found another woman sitting there, or another man. And it's the pleasure of being in a what you call a live location. It's not just a space. immediately you're thrown into a theatre of people.
Yeah.
And there is no way you can plan a scene. It could have been about my husband being found, it could have been about my husband being dead, it could be about my son being missing. It's what we are sharing that information with a theatre of people, and that is
Beautiful.
not something that one can articulate. At
Absolutely.
least I can't.
Yeah,
not-
I
not
get
yet.
it. Oh, it was extraordinary. Thank you. So my last question, Vikram. So from what I see, independent cinema is really, really fighting for a space, especially in the theatres. Since COVID, it tends to be the big spectacle ones, and people say, "Oh, if it's indie, I'll wait till it comes on Amazon." What kind of future do you see for this film, and what does independent cinema need in India the most? How do we do that?
Maybe this model is a solution to where more get made. I honestly don't think the indie cinema is facing a problem of films getting made. I think there's many films getting made. I think it's getting seen.
Seen, yes,
Is
absolutely.
the big problem. Having said that, though, if you'd asked me the same question last year, I'd have said, "Oh my God, it's the Boondocks," and there's no hope for it. But I think that within the last year itself, I think the from Girls Will Be Girls at Sundance last year all the way to this year, where we've seen whether it's that or All We Imagine Is Light or
Yeah.
Saparwanda or
Yeah.
Bad Girl. I think we're seeing indie cinema, at least Indian indie cinema, sort of like make a name for itself at various festivals, and part of that is, again, I think it's a lot of them have been led by women who've been making these films, or they are LGBTQ stories. I think there is a new voice out there, so it's nice that these films are getting seen. It's also nice that they're getting sold and they're getting
Yes.
seen in the country
Yes.
as well. I hope this carries forward, but yeah, we all know that if it's 2 films out of 1,000, then that's not really a healthy number.
Yeah.
So the solution, yes, of course, is something that we're all trying to look for, and if that means in this model where a whole bunch of us come together, some of us who have a certain amount of influence or a certain amount of muscle to be able to try and at least talk to the distributors, or talk to people, or talk to the streamers to release the film. Maybe that's the way, but honestly, it's like people just need to come to the theaters to watch movies.
Yeah.
And I think that's a much larger issue that I think that we're facing generally. And I think those numbers, not just for indie cinema, I think those numbers are down
Yeah.
just overall for all kinds of cinema.
Absolutely.
Back home. So yes, it's I think that's an industry-wide problem. It's like, how do you get people back
Yeah.
to the cinemas?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, okay. But we're very, very thrilled with the warm reception at Berlin. We hope we have great reception to the remaining screenings and conquer the world and in India. Thank you very, very much
Thank
to
you.
each of you for joining us. Thank you. All the best. Thank you.